Late yesterday evening, I want to share news of a genuine victory, one that arrived quietly, behind closed doors on Capitol Hill, largely drowned out by louder stories about cryptocurrency scandals and looming government shutdowns. Still, it shouldn't be dismissed. What took place in a secured congressional briefing room marks the first visible fracture in the wall of silence that has protected Donald Trump's handling of classified national security materials for the past 3 years. A senior Pentagon official, someone with direct access to the most sensitive compartmented information in the Defense Department, walked into a closed-door session with the House Intelligence Committee and delivered 23 documents that federal prosecutors had long suspected existed but could never locate. Legal experts describe this as the most significant defection from Trump's inner circle since the Mar-a-Lago indictment, and constitutional scholars note that the evidence now in congressional hands could reshape the entire landscape of accountability. At a glance, this could be mistaken for another bureaucratic squabble over paperwork, but this was never about file folders or classification stamps. It's about whether a former president can operate above the law indefinitely. What follows will uncover the parts of this episode most people haven't seen. At a glance, this could be mistaken for routine congressional oversight, another hearing that will fade into the background noise of Washington. But this was never about standard document review procedures. It's about the systematic concealment of evidence that goes to the heart of national security. What follows will uncover the parts most people haven't seen. Why this Pentagon official, someone who had remained silent through multiple investigations, finally decided the risk to the Republic outweighed personal loyalty, why congressional investigators responded with such urgency, convening an emergency classified session within hours, and why the House Intelligence Committee, an institution that has frequently avoided direct confrontation with Trump, finally decided this was the line that could not be crossed. To understand how we arrived at this moment, the sequence of events matters. Roughly 8 months ago, not long after the Mar-a-Lago indictment became public, this official, whose identity remains protected under whistleblower statutes, began noticing inconsistencies in the official accounting of classified materials that had been stored at Trump's Florida residence. Internal Pentagon audits showed certain documents listed as returned, yet this official possessed direct knowledge that copies remained in unauthorized locations. What followed went far beyond normal classification disputes. The objective was never simple document mismanagement. It was the deliberate construction of a parallel archive, a shadow library of the nation's most sensitive intelligence, accessible to individuals without security clearances and stored in locations that would never appear on any official inventory. At this point, the behavior moved beyond negligence and into potential espionage territory. That shift is precisely what the House Intelligence Committee identified when they received the initial whistleblower complaint 3 weeks ago, culminating in yesterday's extraordinary classified briefing. At exactly 2:47 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday afternoon, the Pentagon official entered a secure facility beneath the Capitol, accompanied by 2 attorneys and carrying a locked diplomatic pouch containing physical copies of 23 classified documents. Court insiders who track congressional investigations closely describe this as unprecedented, not just the number of documents, but their classification level. 17 of the 23 carry top-secret, sensitive, compartmented information designations, the highest level of classification in the U.S. government. 6 relate to special access programs, intelligence so sensitive that even most members of Congress lack clearance to view them. The documents themselves reveal a disturbing pattern. According to sources familiar with the briefing, they include detailed assessments of nuclear capabilities belonging to adversarial nations, real-time intelligence on covert operations still active in hostile territories, and communications intercepts that could compromise ongoing counterintelligence investigations. One document, dated 14 months ago, contains handwritten margin notes in what witnesses describe as Trump's distinctive style. Short phrases, capital letters, exclamation points. The notations suggest these materials were not simply stored, but actively reviewed, analyzed, and potentially shared with individuals whose names appear nowhere in official visitor logs. What followed went far beyond anything federal prosecutors had uncovered during the Mar-a-Lago search. The plan, as reconstructed from the officials' testimony and corroborating documentation, involved creating multiple unauthorized copies of classified materials before their official return to government custody. The objective was maintaining permanent access to intelligence that could serve various purposes: leverage in business negotiations, bargaining chips with foreign actors, or simply the ability to claim insider knowledge on geopolitical matters. There were even proposals, according to the whistleblower's account, to digitize certain documents and store them on encrypted servers located outside the United States, in jurisdictions where American law enforcement would face significant obstacles to retrieval. The so-called document return process that the National Archives oversaw was never meant to be complete. Instead, a sophisticated system emerged. Official copies returned with great fanfare while unofficial duplicates remained in Trump's control. The plan involved routing these materials through intermediaries, trusted aides, private security personnel, even family members, creating layers of deniability. Financial records subpoenaed by congressional investigators show payments totaling approximately $400,000 to a private document storage firm in the Cayman Islands, an entity with direct ties to a shell company registered under the name of a longtime Trump associate. This financial architecture explains why federal prosecutors encountered such resistance during the Mar-a-Lago investigation. The court has now determined, based on the Pentagon officials' testimony and supporting evidence, that preliminary document transfers had already begun before the National Archives even initiated its retrieval efforts, an unmistakable violation of laws governing classified information handling. It undermined the entire framework of accountability and, more fundamentally, breached the sacred trust between the American people and those entrusted with national security. The House Intelligence Committee's language was unequivocal. The chairman's statement, released under strict classification constraints, emphasized that the evidence presented demonstrates a clear and present danger to national security. The 23 documents represent more than bureaucratic violations. They are proof of systematic deception. Committee members from both parties, speaking anonymously due to the sensitivity of the information, described the briefing as among the most alarming they have attended in decades of congressional service. The evidence doesn't just establish wrongdoing, it reveals a pattern of behavior that legal experts characterize as potentially meeting the statutory definition of espionage, which brings us to the Justice Department itself. For much of the past year, federal prosecutors have operated under significant constraints, facing endless legal delays, appeals, and procedural obstacles erected by Trump's defense team. So what shifted? Why did this Pentagon official at this particular moment choose to break ranks and approach Congress directly rather than working through DOJ channels? It had nothing to do with a newfound commitment to transparency or democratic norms. The real reason is vulnerability and calculation. In Washington, authority rests as much on perception as on position. When the official witnessed Trump's legal team successfully delaying trial dates, when classified documents cases stalled in Florida courts before judges appointed by Trump himself, when it became clear that the traditional prosecutorial route might never produce accountability before the next election cycle, it sent an unmistakable message. Congress represented the only remaining avenue where evidence could be presented, preserved, and acted upon before it disappeared entirely. This episode marks one of the clearest signs yet that Trump's grip on institutional loyalty is weakening. Current and former officials are beginning to calculate that their professional reputations, their security clearances, and potentially their freedom depend on distancing themselves from conduct they can no longer defend. It's among the first real indications that the protective circle around Trump, the wall of silence and complicity, is developing cracks. Still, it would be reckless to underestimate the danger ahead. The documents are now in congressional hands, but the path from evidence to accountability remains uncertain, complex, and vulnerable to interference. The cultural consequences are equally significant. Trump targeted the classification system itself because he understands a simple but powerful truth. Controlling information is controlling power. Treating the nation's most sensitive intelligence as personal property, as leverage or insurance, represents a direct assault on the foundational principle that government secrets belong to the American people, not to individuals who temporarily hold office. Controlling access to classified information is a direct route to controlling narratives, shaping geopolitical relationships, and maintaining influence long after official authority has ended. His goal was to overwrite decades of bipartisan consensus on national security, consensus built on the understanding that intelligence transcends politics, that protecting sources and methods saves lives, that classification exists to safeguard the republic rather than advance personal interests. With a transactional framework rooted in self-dealing, manipulation, and the permanent blurring of public and private interests. The House Intelligence Committee may have secured these 23 documents, but it cannot end the larger struggle for restoring integrity to the classification system. That battle is playing out in federal courts across Florida and Washington, where judges continue wrestling with novel questions about presidential authority over classified materials after leaving office. It's happening in secure facilities at the Pentagon and CIA, where current officials now face impossible choices between following lawful orders and protecting sensitive programs from potential compromise. The defection of this senior official was merely the most visible tip of the iceberg. Behind closed doors, legal experts and former intelligence officers describe a classification system in crisis, undermined not by foreign adversaries, but by an American president who treated national secrets as commodities. This is not about bureaucratic procedures or administrative disputes over file management. This is about whether the United States can maintain the basic architecture of national security when those who swear oaths to protect it instead exploit it for personal gain. And let this serve as a clear message to those in power, those still protecting Trump, those still concealing evidence. We are watching the classified systems. We are watching the document trails. We are watching the financial transactions. Every lie creates a record. Every cover-up leaves evidence. Every act of concealment will eventually face exposure. We will not allow the infrastructure of American intelligence to be liquidated piece by piece for private advantage. Still, it would be reckless to underestimate the danger ahead. A former president who feels cornered, who watches his inner circle defect, who faces mounting evidence of potentially criminal conduct is not a diminished threat. Trump has never accepted accountability quietly. He doesn't interpret congressional investigations as constitutional oversight. He interprets them as persecution, as deep state conspiracy, as justification for ever more extreme responses. The next 72 hours matter critically. With 23 classified documents now beyond his control and a Pentagon whistleblower actively cooperating with multiple investigations, Trump's legal and political vulnerabilities have intensified dramatically. Pressure shapes behavior. And when traditional legal defenses fail and loyalists begin defecting and documentary evidence becomes irrefutable, attention inevitably shifts toward more desperate alternatives. Which brings us back to the warning about witness intimidation. As conventional legal strategies collapse, expect a sharper turn toward public attacks on the whistleblower's credibility, despite statutory protections. Watch for social media campaigns designed to identify the official, pressure family members, or create chilling effects that discourage other potential witnesses. Anticipate emergency motions claiming executive privilege over materials that clearly fall outside any legitimate privilege claim. Look for attempts to classify the House Intelligence Committee's findings themselves, using national security as a shield against accountability rather than its proper purpose. Desperation doesn't retreat, it adapts. We may also witness sudden personnel changes at the Pentagon, targeting officials suspected of disloyalty. We may see renewed calls to defund congressional oversight mechanisms. We may encounter claims that the documents were planted, fabricated, or taken out of context. The same playbook deployed after Mar-a-Lago, but with higher stakes and greater urgency. Today's defection represents a clear win for the rule of law and congressional authority, but it also raises the stakes exponentially. It increases the temptation to pursue even more reckless cover-up attempts, to attack democratic institutions themselves rather than accept the consequences of unlawful conduct. To the citizens who have felt powerless over the past 3 years, watching accountability deferred and justice delayed, I want to speak directly. I know how easy it is to feel like the institutions designed to protect us are failing. I know the disillusionment of seeing classified documents investigations stalled in friendly courts, of watching evidence disappear, of witnessing former officials refuse to testify or invoke executive privilege to shield criminal conduct. But look at what has occurred. Look at the scoreboard today. A senior Pentagon official risked career, reputation, and personal security to place 23 classified documents directly into congressional hands. The House Intelligence Committee convened an emergency classified session and secured the evidence under maximum protection. Members from both parties, despite years of partisan division, recognized the gravity of what they witnessed. Yes, the path to accountability remains uncertain, and obstacles still block every avenue toward consequences. But the institution of congressional oversight still functions. The classification system, despite years of abuse, still has defenders willing to risk everything to protect it. That should remind us that if one whistleblower can break through the wall of silence and fear, so too can others. If 23 documents can be secured and preserved, so too can the full truth eventually emerge. We cannot safeguard these 23 documents while ignoring the broader threats to classification integrity, to intelligence community independence, to the basic principle that no one is above the law. Across every institution, Justice Department, Pentagon, congressional oversight committees, facts must guide us, not political calculation or fear of retaliation. Every citizen deserves transparency about how classified materials are handled and accountability when those systems are violated. Those representatives who stood firm in yesterday's classified briefing must show the same courage in public hearings, in floor votes, in every arena where Trump's conduct demands scrutiny. And let this serve as a clear message to those still in Trump's orbit, those still concealing evidence, those still choosing loyalty over law. We are watching every move. We are tracking every document. We are following every financial transaction. We are documenting every act of obstruction. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires active participation, constant vigilance, and courage from every one of us. Whistleblowers, congressional investigators, and ordinary citizens demanding accountability. If this breakdown helped cut through the noise and explain what's truly at stake, consider subscribing. Sustaining reporting that prioritizes evidence over partisan spin is essential during moments like this. I'd like to hear how you see it. Do you believe this Pentagon defection represents a genuine turning point, or is it just another chapter in an endless cycle of evidence without consequences? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This story is far from over, and I'll be tracking every development as it unfolds.